Hi, this is Alexcursus, a show where I sometimes look at some pre-built Gundam figurine and see how authentic they are. This time, we are looking at the OZ-00MS Tallgeese. Tallgeese is the father of all mobile suits in after Connolly. Technically not the first mobile machine. After Connolly have mobile workers that would eventually evolve with what we know as fishes, but technology needed to develop war machine fighting mobile suits and to an extent more human-like mobile workers. It's all coming from tall geese. Now this is a Gundam universe, sort of a replacement line for the mobile suit in action and a budget version of the Robot Spirit series or Robot Tamashi series. I'll be rating these kits based on saga, style, action, gimmick, and absence. Style, before we take a closer look, I got this because I'm not sure if I would build the RG Tallgeese. So I want a close to 1 to 144 type of Tallgeese for the show and my collection. But yeah, this guy is close to a 1 to 100. That is because mobile suit in After Colony are a bit smaller, and the Gundam Universe line kind of stick to the more traditional 6 to 7-inch action figure scale, so it is a lot larger. Now, I didn't panel line this guy like the G frames because I want to show you how the Gundam universe figurine comes in as they were. They got scopes that matches to high grade. You can see even the back of the shield have scopes, and they are not lacking in details. But they are definitely action figure first, more so than HG, then scale model later. As you can see, they have a very well-defined neck for the Tallgeese, which you don't really see for other incarnation, or at least Gunpla incarnation. Same goes for the chest. Bring Leo back a bit. It is definitely a lot less, let's say, broad compared to the Leo. More so on the waist, where it's much thinner than you see on the Leo. Again, as an action figure, it's meant to be doing dynamic poses, and the torso would usually buried and in the way, so it's smaller. Lower half of the body is pretty much in scale though, with thick thighs, very well defined chins. Foot is not too small, unlike some figure or some HGs. Well, not the HGAC. HGAC have pretty good foot sizes. But yeah, I'm glad they are not doing the overtly small foot for Tallgeese here. And we do have some sculpt on the side skirts and a bit more on the back skirts. You will notice there are quite a bit of color correction here and there. It is definitely smart on Bandai's part to cast the Tallgeese in white and then color correct it with black. For a budget action figure, this is actually pretty good. There is actually some detail inside or for the inner ankle, as well as outside. Again, pretty close to modern HG with the amount of scopes, if not a bit more. Again, benefit from the larger size. Arms and shoulder pads, slightly less detailed is involved. Probably because there would be some weapons or effects masking them, so either way, still on the same level as HG. To the backpack, the whites here is actually a separate piece, and this bits on the side is actually the whitening of the plastic. You can easily fix it with a marker of any kind, really, and then color separation for the wing, and then a bit more sculpt here and there. Onto the shield, kind of chunky looking OZ icon, but it works. Again, painted black. Let's go back to the head. The crest or the top of the helmet is its own piece. The cap is painted white, and then top is painted red. Yellow on the white of the sign of the helmet, that looks fine. I'm not sure why do they need to paint on the separate color piece, but I guess that's easier to paint. The visor is painted metallic blue, so it shines a bit brighter. Although the crest really makes it look like it have twin eyes like a Gundam. So yes, style-wise, definitely not super accurate to its anime counterparts, but on a action figure kind of way, there are some visual like posters and wallpapers sort of thing that does depict the mobile suit in this more more action centric, bigger limbs type of style. So I would still give it an A because there are quite a lot of sculpt done. Color separation is not bad. The color correction, like what base color and what color to paint on, those are the choices are made rather well. We are not seeing paint hardly covering the base color. And yes, you are paying more for this thing than the RG Tallgeese. But so for something that you don't have to build, you just put out of the box and mostly budget range, yeah, I would give it an A for style. Next is action. Action isn't just the number of articulations, but how useful those articulations are. For the Tallgeese, the neck joint is supposed to be very similar to the HG one, but my one here is very much seized up for the torso ball or hinge, so we only get the ball on top, but luckily it is seated quite high, so you got a lot of movement, except Tallgeese had to interfere with the side, so decent, pretty good. Just you do get a ab crunch. Is actually a ball joint from the side, so you get both rotation and crunch. It's not that much greater than you see on HG that does have it, because it's pretty much the same system. And supposedly there should be a waist swivel, but again, mine here it's seized up. Still enough for most poses. Skirts have independent movement. It's actually a separate swivel for them instead of the ball joint, which does leave it higher than you would see on HG. And then the side skirts have the lower parts on a swivel and then the top parts on another joint and swivel. So again, a lot of range. That enabled Tallgeese to have a very good side kick. Kicking to the front, the very well covered shin is working against Tallgeese here. Although the double knee is like OHG where it only goes to 90. I don't know if you can see it, but the hips, the hip joint is like the scope dog where you have play, like you can drop down or push up, but yeah, not helping a whole lot in this case, but you know, do help in some other places, especially, you know, standing up where you get a tighter closing on the armor, like less gap in the armor. The foot on a ball joint and pretty generous ball joint. Not that special, to be honest. As for Kung Fu fighting, yeah, it's doing alright. The arms is on a ball joint and then the shoulder is a pivot, pretty much like HG. Bicep pivot, again like HG, and then a double elbow, but got interfered with its own armor. But you know, this is pretty realistic even for a human type of elbow motion range, so that's pretty good. Backpack boosters are on a single joint. You see a drum here. It is not a pivot, only the top drum moves, but you can pivot it all the way up to both sides of Tallgeese, where it can charge straight forward if need be. Sadly, you can't open up the backpack for the thrusters. You only get the tiny wings for show. So yeah, action wise, Gundam Universe Tallgeese isn't bad, but compared to modern HG or HG release at the same time as its own release, is not actually better, if not worse. Yeah, it can still Kung Fu fight a bit, but there are quite a few limitations here and there, so I would, and you know, this is supposed to be an action figure and is having less action than your typical model kit, so yeah, B for action. Next is Gimmick. Gimmick are usually the onboard and optional weapons for the mobile suit and some additional functionalities on the mobile suit. For Tallgeese here, that would be the backpack, the shield, and the doppler gun. The backpack we have looked at in action. You can't even open it up to show the thrusters, but it does have the little wings to deploy. It is okay, I guess. Next is the doppler gun. It is in the correct size, or mostly correct size anyways. And the muzzle is hollowed out. That's cool. Magazine not removable, not too special, and then a variable grip, which is nice because being stuck on Tallgeese shoulder, well, being carried on Tallgeese shoulder isn't the problem, but there's only one swivel from the shoulder and then a rather restrictive ball joint on the Doppelganger itself. So it is actually kind of challenging to put the Doppelganger into Tallgeese's hand and pose with it, because you are locked. Once you have Tallgeese's hand on the Doppelganger, this is its right arm. This whole thing moves together, or else, it would be out of alignment. The shield fares better. Having a single swivel hurts it a bit less. Although the ball joint here is just as tiny, so you get very little movement with it. And yeah, you basically just got flip all the way up or all the way down with this. I mean, you can kind of do this sort of number, but yeah, it's not really helping. Good news is the beam saber can be pulled out of the beam saber holsters, and they even have slots to put in beam saber blades. Unfortunately, there is no beam saber blades coming with this box, so you just have the beam saber hilt but no beam saber blades for your Tallgeese. I don't think they have a weapon holding left hand for the Tallgeese either. So yeah, pretty out of luck in the gimmick department for the Gundam Universe Tallgeese here. So once again, despite being an action figure, the Gundam Universe Tallgeese here have less gimmick than a model kit. That doesn't really fare well for an action figure, so I am going to give it a B for gimmick. Last and probably very prominent is absence for the Gundam Universe Tallgeese. Missing beam saber blades, Doppelganger that is really restrictive, backpack that couldn't show the thrusters. It's like we are having a, I don't know, large scale non-graded model kit pre-built for us, or kind of a giant G-frame that has less action, because G-frame have super excellent action, and this thing is okay. The MSRP for these things are pretty much the same as the RG Tallgeese, which, I mean, it bodes well if you can't build, don't have the time to build, and you are trying to get something a bit more action figure-y, because RGs are a bit finicky for that. So there is that for the Gundam Universe Tallgeese. Having said that, the Gundam Universe Tallgeese is probably one of the least appealing offering from the Gundam Universe, which is kind of weird because it is a very good base mold, but maybe there will be another video for the whole Gundam Universe line thing. But at least for someone who can build, and for what Bandai had achieved with the HGAC Leo, I just don't know why they are not making a HGAC Tallgeese, like just a couple of extra parts here and there, cast it in white, and you are done. It's literally free money on the table. You know, if people have problem with C clips and KPS joints, they can get the RG, they can build the old 1 to 100 XG, or having said that, Tallgeese is definitely better than at least the 01 to 144 XG. Well, the original Gundam WIng release doesn't really have a HG in 1 to 144, but it is about the same number of part separation, maybe less color separation has the HG. So yeah, compared to that, Tallgeese is much better. Compared to the 1 to 100, you win some, you lose some. You can take a look at my Rising Gundam video. It is definitely way too old. Like, this does have better joints, the whole structure is better, part separation are better than that old HG line in most parts. Until we get to some really fancy things they did for a selection of models for that line. So yeah, for now, if you want anything that has a bit more durability than the RG Tallgeese, the Gundam universe is not a bad offering. Just going in that it is not 1 to 144, because it is in the same size as the bigger Gundam / mobile suits in the line, and knowing it is not quite the same aesthetics and actiony and gimmicky as the rest of the HGAC line. So for absence, despite how the Gundam universe Tallgeese miss a lot of things that Tallgeese should have, it is still filling up a absence that Bandai have left, with Tallgeese being only released in MG and RG. I think there is a Robo Tamashi that would be closer to the 1 to 144 scale, but Robo Tamashi is a bit more collector graded, so the price range is up there, and I don't think it got a reprint any recently. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, the Gundam Universe Tallgeese definitely fill up some absence. So for what it is lacking, I should give it a C, but I will give it a B for filling up a stepped or block or market space for a less finicky but still detailed and somewhere around 5 to 7 inches tall of Tallgeese. So to recap, the Gundam Universe Tallgeese have pretty good sculpt. Color separations and color correction paints are pretty well done, despite not being completely accurate with the line art or its anime counterparts. It still looks pretty good, so I will give it an A for style. For action, it has a lot of articulation points, even for an action figure. Especially with the skirts. But these articulation points are not as useful as you might see on other HG, especially the HG AC line. So while it can Kung Fu fight, I have to give it a B for action, pretty much the same as the older HGs. Gimmick, the backpack have wings but lack the option to show the thrusters inside. Doppelguns itself is fine, but the carrier from the shoulder is failing it, so your Tallgeese is only locked into one holding position, despite the grip for the doppelgun have various positions. The shield, once again, kinda failed by the carrier, but not quite as bad. It does have scopes at the back, and the beam sabers hilt can be drawn out by themselves, but there is no beam saber blades in the set. Last nail in the coffin is we don't get a weapon holding left hand for Tallgeese, so I have to give it a C for the Gundam Universe Tallgeese here, because this is supposed to be an action figure. You're supposed to have more action with it, but it's actually having less compared to a model kit. Last and not least is absence. While the Gundam Universe Tallgeese itself have plenty of absence, Bandai, consciously or not, had left an absence in place of a less complicated, slightly more durable kind of Tallgeese in the smaller scale in the market space. Yes, this is more to the 1:100 scale, and the 01:100 HG isn't too bad, but compared to building that kit, this is still more durable. Color separation is arguably better, probably less detail, with the thrusters, but not being completely outclassed is good enough in this case for absence. So I will give it a B for it still have a place for your Gundam WIng or Tallgeese fans. So the verdict for the Gundam Universe Tallgeese is A for style, B for action, C for gimmick, and B for absence. Overall, I think out of all of the Gundam Universe offering, despite being probably the weakest in the line, it is still one of the better deals that Bandai offers. Now, I'm not saying Gundam Universe is bad, but it is clearly not edging out on, say, HG kits. They are slightly more durable than the HG kits because PVC is a bit more durable, but at the same time you can't repair PVC, so there is a bit of balancing in that. Like I said, with absence, Bandai, consciously or not, had left a void for a 1:144 Tallgeese that isn't the RG or the old one. And yes, this is more of a 1:100, but style-wise, it is closer. I'm sure with some perspective, we can make this work. If you wanted Tallgeese, but you don't want to deal with either the MG version or the RG, it is not a bad choice. Not until we got a G-frame anyways. Wink. Thanks for watching. See you next time.